Hello everyone and welcome! Today I wanted to explore what might have happened if Arctic and Foeslayer stayed in the Kingdom of Ice. Personally, I think their relationship would have been much healthier if they'd left both kingdoms and found a nice lonely island or something to hide out on, but that's neither here nor there. Because despite everyone begging me for what-ifs with happy endings, I'm afraid I have a type, and happily ever after just ain't it. Instead of returning home with her mother, once Foeslayer learns about the Nightwing plan to use her to lure in poor Arctic, that's the final straw for her. All her life, she's never been enough for her mother. She's been frowned upon, belittled, scoffed at. And now, when she finally has something of her own, something good, her mother wants to take it and claim it as her own? No way. Foeslayer refused to choose that life for Arctic and their future dragonettes. Instead, when the Nightwing delegation decided to leave, when her mother nodded to Foeslayer to return to her side, like she was calling a dog to heel, Foeslayer shifted more solidly onto her talons. She was sitting with Arctic, who was sitting, somewhat boredly, with the Icewing Royals. "Foeslayer," her mother snapped, though her greedy gaze was on Arctic, not her daughter. "Let's go, dear." "Foeslayer will be staying with us," Arctic announced, tilting his chin up proudly as he made the announcement. Foeslayer observed the reactions in the room curiously. From her mother, shock, betrayal, then anger, in that order. From most of the other Icewings, surprise and confusion. Queen Diamond looked pinched, but not shocked. That made sense. Arctic had promised to talk to his mother about their choice. Although Foeslayer had been worried about the outcome of that conversation, somehow he'd convinced his mother to allow her to stay. They'd made some kind of deal. She saw some, though, who didn't just look surprised. Some Icewings looked furious, especially that boring one he had previously been engaged to, and some of the other royals. Foeslayer twitched her wings back, refusing to be nervous. This was what she wanted. The Ice Kingdom might not be home, but it would be good for her. She glanced over at Arctic, who wasn't even looking at the shouting Nightwings anymore. His piercing blue eyes were fixed on hers, and Foeslayer was certain of it. She could be happy anywhere, as long as Arctic was there beside her. It wasn't until years later that Foeslayer began to wonder if just having Arctic was enough for her. They had 2 dragonettes, Whiteout, who Arctic had named, and her little Darkstalker. Both had hatched on the brightest night, but had no powers. Icewings kept their eggs buried in snow, and Arctic had convinced Foeslayer to follow their traditions. Foeslayer had agreed. After all, the pair would grow up Icewing. They would have no Nightwing teachers, nobody to explain their powers to them. They would stand out even more than they already did among other dragonettes their age. Neither of them could pass for Icewing. Darkstalker could nearly be mistaken for a full Nightwing. Foeslayer had thought no tribe could possibly be more stuffy than the Nightwings, but, well, she'd been wrong. Arctic had made his gift to the tribe a few weeks after the Nightwing delegation left, quite angrily. He'd never told Foeslayer what it was, though, only that it had been part of the deal he'd made with his mother. Ah, yes, the deal. The great, life-altering agreement Arctic and Diamond had apparently struck, behind closed doors, as to his relationship with Foeslayer. Even all these years later, Foeslayer didn't know the particulars of it, though she knew the broad strokes. Diamond had been furious when Arctic declared his intention to be with Foeslayer. Beyond furious, apparently. But for the first time in his life, Arctic had decided he didn't care. He told his mother that he would be with Foeslayer, whether here or in the Night Kingdom where their tribe would inherit his animus magic. Arctic had correctly identified the one thing his mother truly cared about, his power and who he'd pass it on to. And apparently, concerned that she might not be able to simply force her son to stay in the kingdom, Diamond had made concessions. She allowed Foeslayer to stay in the Ice Kingdom, to be with her son, but she had conditions. Arctic had allowed her to choose his gift to the tribe. The ceremony had been private, and nobody Foeslayer talked to knew what the gift was. Arctic refused to speak of it. That wasn't even the worst part, though. Foeslayer wasn't to live in the Icewing Palace where the royal family and the other nobles stayed. That was fine with her, honestly. They were a stilted, stuffy bunch, and she didn't think she was missing much. But she'd basically been banished, with Arctic, to a lonely estate at the northernmost tip of the kingdom. Honestly, it wasn't terrible. An old stone castle on a cliff overlooking the icy, lashing ocean beyond. The cold didn't bother her, with the gift Arctic had given her the first time they met. And she didn't mind being away from the judgmental eyes of the Icewing court. But it bothered Foeslayer that she and Arctic had to hide up here, that they were treated as something shameful, and their dragonettes were shunned. Arctic spent most of his time there with them, so it wasn't so bad. There were a few other Icewings who lived nearby, so they weren't totally isolated. But over the years, Foeslayer came to miss her Nightwing friends, miss the bustle of markets and festivals, or even seeing other dragons out her window. Here, she was shoved in a corner with her dragonettes like a musty secret. And oh, her dragonettes. Diamond had made it clear she would have no Nightwing dragonettes in her royal line, but that she did intend to keep animus magic in the family. So the final condition of her deal with Arctic, her promise never to harm Foeslayer, to treat her and their dragonettes well, was that Arctic produce heirs for the royal line as soon as possible. At first, Foeslayer had been furious about that, and so had Arctic. But after Snowflake had their dragonette, Diamond dispensed Arctic of all his duties to the court. He was free to leave, to spend the rest of his life with Foeslayer, away from it all. Foeslayer had made her peace with it, she supposed. She'd had to anyways. Arctic and Snowflake's daughter, Frostburn, had hatched an animus, and after that nobody thought about Arctic much at all. Foeslayer had met Frostburn once or twice. She and Snowflake had visited a few times, when Darkstalker and Whiteout were very young. But the visits had never exactly been friendly. Foeslayer got the feeling Snowflake considered Arctic the chief architect in the ruining of her life. And though he was her father, Frostburn barely knew him. Frostburn was the future of animus magic in the Icewing tribe now. She was being shaped and molded and influenced by all the other Icewing royals, and few wanted her to take after her rebellious father. But it wasn't all bad. Gift out of the way, heir taken care of, mother mollified, Arctic found himself somewhere he'd never been before in his life. Free. He'd never seemed happier than when he came to stay at their estate for good, his time in the court over with. Foeslayer rediscovered why she'd fallen in love with him, his humor, his charm. He wasn't burdened now by his power and heritage. He wasn't even a prince anymore. He was just Arctic. Darkstalker was a sensitive but clever dragonette. He made friends easily with those who would make friends with a hybrid dragonette. The non-royal Icewings, Foeslayer was finding, were more tolerant about such things. He loved to explore the tundra surrounding their home and bring back little trinkets for his sister Whiteout. Whiteout was more of a homebody. She loved to draw and paint and listen to Arctic read her scrolls or tell her funny stories about his days in the palace. She was an odd dragonette, but Arctic doted on her, and Darkstalker always included her in his games and adventures when she wanted to be included, so Foeslayer figured Whiteout was doing all right. As the years went on, she grew to appreciate it. Foeslayer never got over the isolation, never quite stopped missing the feeling of living in a city with other dragons around. But she did eventually make some Icewing friends, and she had her dragonettes to love, and she had Arctic. Who knew how things might have been different if she'd allowed her horrible mother to pull them back to the Nightwing Kingdom, with all of its politics and power plays. Foeslayer shuddered at the thought of her mother ever meeting either of her perfect little dragonettes. The deal Arctic had made with his mother, Foeslayer didn't like it, but as time passed, she grew to accept it. It had given them a path forwards, given them a chance at a family, and an escape from the Icewings and the Nightwings. And eventually, Foeslayer realized that the prediction of her younger self And eventually, Foeslayer realized that the prediction her younger self had made, that she could always be happy anywhere Arctic was true. She was happy. She had her dragonettes and Arctic, and that was good enough for her. Okay, I guess happily ever after is in the cards for this story. When I started writing this, I planned to have the war still happen and all that, and it was going to be sad and drama. But then it just kind of flowed and did its own thing, and Arctic had a different Animus Dragonette, and nobody had any powers, so I guess, somehow, these guys lucked into a happy enough ending. For the record, the spell Arctic made for his mother will be called the Gift of Power. It's a necklace that, when worn by an Animus Icewing, ensures that their firstborn Dragonette will inherit their power, after which time they lose their own power. Diamond didn't trust that Arctic wouldn't break more of their rules and use his power again, and she wanted to ensure that the Animus power would always be in the Icewing family line. This necklace ensures that there will always be at least one. Am I going to explore how this changes things down the line? Absolutely not. For once, I managed to escape the writing process with a decently sized what if, and I'm not endangering that now. Anyways, if y'all enjoyed this video, I have many other what ifs you can check out too. Be sure to comment below if you enjoyed this happier ending what if, since I don't have them very often. Thank you all so much for watching, and have a blessed rest of your day.